and I give the call to the honourable member for Warringah.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move the following motion, that the House 1 notes that A. Currently in Australia, 1 woman every 4 days is murdered by her current or former partner, and 2.3 million Australian women have experienced violence from an intimate partner. B. As of 16 May 2024, at least 21 women have been allegedly murdered by a current or former intimate partner, and at least another 11 women allegedly killed in violent acts by male perpetrators in Australia this year. C. The rate of women killed by a current or former intimate partner in Australia increased to 28% in 2022-23 compared to the previous year. And 2. Notes that some in the women's safety sector have called for immediate action and urgent investment increases in the following areas to keep women safe now and achieve the 10-year goal of the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children 2022-2032, and they include frontline services for domestic, family and sexual violence, including crisis services, refuges, emergency housing and perpetrator interventions. B. Legal aid and Women's Legal Services Australia to allow more women to access the legal help they require. C. Undertake an immediate national review of sentencing laws with a special focus on strengthening state and territory-level responses with use of AVOs, electronic monitoring of domestic violence and sexual assault offenders, and removal of character references during sentencing in domestic violence cases. D. Establish a national database to record all those convicted of family, domestic and sexual violence offences. E. Establish a national mechanism to track family, domestic and sexual violence deaths across all states and territories to identify red flags and risk factors. And F. Community education and prevention work, including respectful relationships education, to bring about culture change. And I thank the Leader of the House and the opposition in relation to this motion being able to be moved. I am angry. Australian women are angry. They are frustrated and they are tired. Too many women are being killed by men, by domestic violence, from current and former intimate partners. It's a national crisis and it needs an emergency response. 64 women were killed by domestic violence in Australia in 2023. So far in 2024, according to Destroy the Joint, at least 28 women have allegedly been killed by domestic violence. That means that on average in Australia, 1 woman is murdered by her current or former partner every 4 days. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women are 3 times more likely to experience violence than non-Indigenous women, and 11 more times more likely to die due to assault, and 34 times more likely to be hospitalised as a result of that violence. Now, when 2 young men died in New South Wales, the New South Wales government introduced urgent mandatory sentences for one-punch attacks. When it was terrorism, the laws were changed urgently to jail people on apprehended risks of crime. That is the urgency we see. But when Australian men kill Australian women, the government's national plan is to take 10 years. Now, I appreciate there is much sentiment to work on this, but what we need is a crisis response. This is a crisis situation, a mobilisation of resources, urgent legislation. Business as usual is simply not good enough. This week we have had the handing down of the budget, and we cannot have a situation where we move on from that to a situation where it's more of the same. That so many services, so many people are just desperately looking to this place, to all of us here, to make the change that is needed, to increase the urgency, to respond to a crisis with the kind of emergency response. Instead, when another woman becomes a domestic violence statistic, what we do see is we continue to witness sympathy and hand-wringing. And I'm not saying that is not genuine, but we always talk about it's complex and it will take time. And I don't disagree. The why, the cause behind this is complex, and culture change will take time. But there are very real levers to keep women safe now that can be pulled immediately. And that is what I want to speak about now, that we need an urgent injection of funding for legal aid services, for frontline services. We need urgently to look at this problem. And whilst the National Cabinet came together, there were many disappointed that there was no urgent, immediate actions that we could really grasp and say this will change women's safety now. This will keep women safe. It will keep them alive. It is so common, I'm sure every member in this place has heard from services in their electorates that they are turning away more and more women every week. That this can be stopped. It can be stopped now. We hear repeatedly of court processes that fail. Every time there is a horrific murder, we hear in the investigation that ensues after that time and time again the processes have failed. But there is no collating of that. There is no change of laws. We have not come in here and seen any immediate changes. Access to legal aid and legal services is essential in interactions with the court. I know that. I've been there as an advocate, as a barrister. This is a lever that the government can pull now. It could have pulled it in its budget. It didn't. Many walked away disappointed with that. Urgent additional funding can be allocated now. At the very least, if we're not going to immediately change the laws and the sentencing laws and get the states to agree to do that, then at the very least equip them with legal aid, with some advice so that they can at least engage with the legal system and get it to work to its best advantage. These changes can be done now, they can be done quicker, they can save women's lives. I've been in this place, we've had condolences, we've had moments, and everyone is sorry and everyone commits to work and to do better. But what we urgently need to do is to challenge the laws. They're failing to keep women safe, and that urgent injection of funding. What else is a government, is a parliament here for but to keep the community safe? That is ultimately that social licence, that absolute commitment. It's why there is so much support for huge spends on defence budgets, because we agree as a society that we keep our community safe. But women within our community are not safe. We are not safe within. So I'm calling on the federal government to commit an extra $1 billion a year to frontline services, to long-term funding of those services to ensure they stop turning women away, that they have sufficient space, beds, crisis services, community education, ongoing, consistent prevention work. And that's why I was so disappointed and frustrated with the budget. There was nothing new announced. And whilst I welcome the small support that there is for individual women that can access the leaving violence support, more is needed. Domestic violence is estimated to cost the economy some 1 to 2% of GDP. So if that, in the words of Dr. Angela Jackson, is to give us a measure of the sense of urgency, of the scale of the response that we should be committing to ensure we are saving that money, save that lost GDP by investing into the services that will reduce the outcomes. 1 to 2% of GDP is some $50-odd billion that we are losing because of this scourge. So we can save that money by putting the kind of money needed into frontline services, into legal aid. So that sense of urgency is what we are calling for. And I welcome that everyone is noting that in this motion, but we need to then see the progress. So many NGOs are desperately wanting to see that action from the government. And it is fantastic to see bipartisan support of acknowledging the scale of the problem. We now need to move to that step change. We've seen in New South Wales positive developments this week. They are now committed to fully funding staying home, leaving violence across the state. This program has been shown to work, but yet it was not delivered in every LGA. Of course, Northern Beaches, we were completely missed out. That is now going to change. Warringah will be including. It will save women's lives. In Warringah, Northern Beaches Women's Shelter is currently turning away approximately 25 women a month. They're full. They have applied for more funding. They've applied to ensure they can grow their facility under the Safer Place program, but they've been rejected because it doesn't fit with the bureaucratic boundaries and guidelines within that program. They are funded to help 208 women a year, and last year they helped some 836. So we need to get past the bureaucratic system that is stopping and preventing them from being able to provide more. The Safe Places Inclusion Round is a great initiative, but it's useless if it doesn't deliver the funding. So I call on everyone in this place, please, let's move to save women's lives.
And I thank the member for Warringah. Is there a seconder for